Hey, welcome to the second episode of Blue Collar Philosophy. I had an idea this today, thinking about Easter approaching, and I'm usually going to do interview style, but since this idea came to me so quickly, I decided to do myself. So, because when I get inspiration, I like to do it right away. But however, so this is going to be more of like a philosophical / psychological defense of the resurrection. There are some historical defenses of the resurrection, and I'll post some of those links in the description. If you do have some ones that you find helpful and that you like, feel free to also post those in the comments. So why the resurrection? I don't think that it can be understated that it's really the crucial point of Christianity. If you follow it, Paul said that if Christ is still dead, if he is not raised, then we are to be pitied among all people. And I think he has a point, because in biblical theology, the question, I guess, it comes up is not where will you go when you die. It's more about the culmination of heaven and earth being married together. And Christ is said to be the first fruits of the new creation. That's what it's called, new creation. So in his resurrection, he was the first of the new creation, and he was said to spend 40 days on the earth before he ascended to heaven and is seated at the right hand of Father, which just means he's taken up his throne in power, and he has currently since then been rolling over the nations. That's a whole another topic for discussion. But I think there is good philosophical and psychological reasons to believe in the resurrection. So I think it's important to know that Jesus wasn't the first one to come along. Actually, there's some that claim after them to be the Messiah. Now the word Messiah means anointed one, because the Israelites, they anointed their kings. So that's what they were really waiting for. They were waiting for a king. There had been other movements before him, people claiming to be the Messiah, but they basically all ended the same. Either they were threatened with death or they were actually killed. And once that happened, then everything dispersed. Their movement ended. And actually, that was the same trajectory with Jesus and his disciples. If you take the gospel accounts, after the death of Jesus, they were in hiding, even though it says that he told them that he must die, but he would be raised in 3 days. I don't know how that works, but I mean, if I was in their shoes, it would test my faith too. So obviously, they made a huge impact on the world. The disciples, and including Paul. And to do what they did and to endure what they endured, I think you would need pretty strong motivation. So one of the theories that was put out there, it's kind of pessimistic, but they almost say that the disciples made it all up, basically to start like a new religion and cult and give themselves power. If this was the plan, it was a really terrible plan, because the church in Jerusalem was extremely poor. The places they traveled to, a lot of times they were very poor. Also, back in that day, your tribe was everything. So to claim that Jesus rose from the dead to your people, and they mostly reject you, well, you're basically ostracized from your tribe in that time in the world, which was very hard. Could be a death sentence, so to speak, if you're ostracized from your own society. And like I said before, the Jerusalem church was like extremely poor. So if it was a lie or a ploy to develop their own religion or cult or anything like that, I mean, anything's possible, but I don't think that would be proper motivation to do what they did, basically. Also, there's another theory that they mass hallucinated that Jesus rose from the dead. Again, anything's possible, but there are other extra biblical accounts of sources of Jesus, and actually Jesus after his resurrection, and said to be healing people. There are other theories, but so far, criticism of the resurrection, those are kind of the two main ones that I've heard. Now, for me, I believe in the resurrection from at least his perspective. Like, I literally think that he rose from the dead, because the gospel accounts are not kind to its heroes, so to speak. The disciples were shown in a cowardly way. The first people to see Christ resurrected were women, and back then a woman's testimony was not considered trustworthy. So if this was religious propaganda, they kind of did a bad job at it, I think. But really, the only reason I think that they were able to do what they did, basically light the world on fire, get ostracized from their own people, is that they really did see the risen Christ. I think you can employ Occam's razor, the explanation that makes actually, I'm mispronouncing this, not pronouncing it. I'm misdescribing it. I'll have to look it up afterwards. But I think it applies. But the resurrection, the fact that I believe in the resurrection isn't like really why I'm so passionate about my faith. The reason I am passionate about my faith is because I have experienced Christ, not in like a bodily form or anything, or like a vision, although I do have close friends that have experienced those type of things. And there's accounts of, especially in the Middle East, people in Muslim countries, that maybe that part of the world, some parts of the world, they're not friendly to other faiths. But there are a lot of accounts of Christ appearing to Muslims in their dreams, asking them to follow him. So there are experiences like that. But me personally, the way I've really encountered Christ has been his presence. And it's hard to describe, but two things: it's very distinct when it's his presence, and two, I have no control over it. It happens certain times, like if I'm in worship or prayer, sometimes it'll happen, and sometimes it'll just come upon me without warning when I'm not expecting it. And I know a lot of people don't put stock in personal experience, and I understand that. I don't think skepticism is a bad thing. You can go too far with it. But I understand people being skeptical of it. However, if you do put a lot of stock in, say, something like empirical evidence, well, empirical evidence is based on personal experience. This is personal experience that's repeated over and over again. But our reality is very strange, and there's a lot of things that you just can't repeat over and over again. There's things that don't follow like a script, especially if it's something that's sentient or has intelligence and things like that. But that's pretty much it for the video. Very short. I'm sure if I had an interview, it would go longer. But wherever you are, however you're holding up, I just want to say peace be with you, and I'll be praying that the Lord favor falls upon you and bless you and your family.